So the best thing that any of us can do to begin really polarizing towards the positive is just take a look around at our life, and ask yourself, why would I have wanted a life like this, my soul? What lessons would I have been trying to teach myself spiritually by putting myself in a lifetime like this? Maybe you've been abused a lot, or you've just been, you've had a very poor, impoverished life. What spiritual lessons would that life be trying to teach you? Whether it's self-love, forgiveness, acceptance. These messages are actually screaming at us in our own life, right? But until we become self-aware, we're kind of like an NPC that's just going through a game.
Yep. Mistaken for who we think we are, and an illusion of identity that we've created for ourselves. And if you're tuning into this episode of the Know Thyself Podcast right now, and you've made it this far, I want you to bring your full attention and presence to where we're about to go, because we're going to keep going deeper and deeper here. And I truly believe the value of not just what we've gone into in the framework we've set up, but what we are going to go into the rest of the podcast really is an amazing catalyst in understanding and awareness for how to wake up, for how to alleviate suffering in life, how to know yourself, and have a beautiful experience in this life. So stay with us. We're going to keep diving deeper. People are familiar with IQ and EQ. Not as many people are familiar with the term SQ. So because as you wake up, you realize this is a game, and you have this kind of heightened awareness of what lessons I'm supposed to be learning, and like you perceive how things are working for you, not just to you, in a victimhood consciousness. You can develop spiritual intelligence. And so how do you describe what spiritual intelligence is? And then we go from there.
Yeah. So the way that I've understood spiritual intelligence, I don't think that there's one right definition, but the way it's come through for me is your SQ is your comprehension of reality. How much do you truly comprehend what reality is? Now, if that definition is kind of ambiguous, another one that I'll often give is on a more functional level. Your SQ is the combination of your level of self-awareness and your embodiment, or your integration. And there's obviously a big difference between the two, right? Masculine, feminine. We all know lots of people who are really high in self-awareness, and they're full of spiritual knowledge, and they can talk the talk like the best of them and razzle dazzle you with knowledge.
I find that quite often in a lot of plant medicine communities, anywhere where you're regularly going to gain a lot of awareness, like you can have access to a lot of insight. But I'd be careful with unearned wisdom, because you have that level of awareness, and if you're lacking the embodiment, it's like your reality and your experience of reality actually doesn't change that much.
Right. And you can invite some real tough karma too, right? So we have to actually, once we gain the awareness of self, we then have to embody the self. And that is the feminine element of what we are. So SQ would be a combo of your masculine and feminine, but I like to delineate that as self-awareness and embodiment.
Yeah. Being yourself, knowing yourself, having that kind of coming together. And so now as we go through this process, we develop our own spiritual intelligence. How we essentially go on this ascension spiral. I want to break these down to the gross reality, the subtle body, and the causal body, and how we can actually move through them. Because a lot of people are familiar with moving through the denser energies, or like shadow work and doing talk therapy or whatever, like in this reality. But I have always been keen and interested to see the deeper causal reasons for why things are manifesting in the first place. And until we can actually, we can work through things on this, in the third density, in this reality, and see progress, have an improved display of experience of life.
Sure.
But if we're actually having the desire to seek, to know ourselves at the most fundamental level, we get to realize what the higher reasons or the deeper reasons, depending on which way you look at it, for the happenings in our reality. So give us kind of your framework on that ascension process of how we're actually waking up, and then how on each level we can, quote unquote, move through our shit to have access to these higher densities of consciousness.
Yeah. So in my programs, I actually teach, let's just call it healing for convenience. I teach healing in these three different bodies: gross purification, subtle purification, and causal purification. So gross purification is shadow work. So that's where we have to meet all of that stuck energy that's in the body: trauma, pain, resentment from the past, we have to unlock those energies and heal them with love and forgiveness. And when we do that, I'll tell my students, like, anytime you're experiencing a challenging emotion, you're doing gross purification in that moment. And all you're asked to do is just meet that with love. You don't need to think about it. You don't need to trace back the trauma to the origin or something. Like, you just need to give love to yourself, to that part of yourself. But that's only one dimension of healing. The second dimension is the subtle purification, and that's healing our thoughts. So really, if you're just lost in a world of painful emotions, the last thing on your mind is your thoughts. You're too busy on the energetic level, the dense, gross level. So we need to give ourselves, free some space up so we can really start doing some self-inquiry, right? Have a little more space in our mind. That's where we get into subtle purification. What do you believe about yourself? What negative core beliefs are you still holding on to that you need to see from the perspective of truth? That's subtle purification. So we have to question every thought we hold about ourselves and see if it holds up under the light of what's eternally true of who we are. And that's how we purify the subtle body. And then the causal body is, again, our karmic body. And so we heal our causal body from the karma that it's carrying by paying attention to our life lessons. Ra calls it catalyst in the Law of One. Every experience that we have is like a catalyst that is there to provide an opportunity for growth if it's perceived and used accordingly. So, hey, what lesson is this moment asking me to learn? What part of my being is it demanding of me? More patience, more compassion, something like that. You have to pay attention to your life and communicate with your life. And that's how your soul heals karma, which is the causal body. So there's 3 dimensions of healing that we are engaged in. And for me, it's helpful to know the distinctions between those 3.
Yeah, because different purification processes are needed depending upon what stage of development you're at. Yeah. But the more you get access to higher levels of consciousness, the more you're in tune with the subtle energies that are behind the more gross, denser manifestations. And then you begin to work through those. And yoga is a science and technology that allows you to accelerate that process and really go through that. And most people are just familiar with an asana practice of physical postures and this westernized view of what yoga is. But there's 8 limbs that dive deep into actually how to move through this process. So it's when you have this understanding, and I just wish, and I know in our lifetime the education system will have to be revamped, otherwise for sure it's not going to be pretty. But like this understanding and framework is so needed, and it's beautiful once you arrive at, because then you have tools, you have an understanding to move through energy and actually become in that creator consciousness where you're actively meeting life halfway in the awakening of your soul's journey. Yeah, really well said. You're touching on the importance of, it's part of knowing thyself, is like, what part of me needs healing right now? There's a lot of people they sort of become perpetual shadow workers, especially in the plant medicine community, right? They almost get addicted to shadow work and never go the next level up. And we could also call gross purification like feminine healing. And we could call subtle purification masculine healing, and then karmic healing. So I love to use this analogy of a flooded house to understand the difference. Let's say there's a house that's flooded with water, and the house represents you, your body. The water that's in the house represents all the stuck energy from your traumas and your pain. So if I want to heal that house, I have to do 2 things, right? I need to open up all the windows and doors to let the water flood out. But if I just do that, and I don't go around and then turn off all the faucets in the house, the water's just going to reaccumulate, right? So if I don't change my beliefs about myself, I can heal that trauma, but I'm going to recreate it at some point because I still believe I'm separate, I'm lacking, I'm unworthy, whatever. So I have to do some subtle purification too and change my beliefs. That represents turning all the faucets off in the house. So if I just turn the faucets off, but I don't open all the windows and doors, well, at least I've stopped the water from accumulating, but I'm still full of the pain and the trauma, right? So there's also a problem there. And that's where I see more of like the non-duality community, where you get these people that are like professional bypassers almost, where like I literally watched a video of a Neo-Advaita teacher not too long ago where, some guy, he's sitting on a stool and there's an audience and they're asking questions, and this lady's like,
So my 12-year-old son just passed away in a car accident, but it didn't really happen. And it's just like, oh, I felt it, man, in my heart when I watched that. Cause that's true, right? Like, eternally speaking, your son didn't die. Nothing happened to him. But nevertheless, you're carrying the pain of that trauma and the loss of your son here that you need to meet.
If you arrive at that understanding authentically, that's beautiful.
Yes.
But to have it as a belief system, and like that's the difference between information, knowledge, and wisdom, where it's actually integrated in what we spoke to, that embodiment that's really needed.
Yeah.
And so like, it's not that it's wrong, but if you're going to bypass yourself to that belief system and be indoctrinated into everything's an illusion.
Yeah.
Like, you can say that, but unless you've done the work to actually have that be a felt experience in your reality, then you're just causing more issues for yourself and more suffering. And that's painful.
Yeah. It's not authentic.
Yeah.
Like, I'll get a lot of non-duality people comment on my videos, and they'll ask me things, and I get it, right? But like, for example, there was a post I did about everything exists in relationship. The whole universe is cooperation and relationship. And somebody commented and was like, false. In oneness, there's no relationship. There's just emptiness,
Right.
And so I just said, is it your direct experience that there is no relationship? You don't experience relationship? Is that your actual experience? And well, but non-duality says, so it's like, yeah, there's problems on that level too, if we're not able to meet what's real and happening here in the physical. And it's not that it's not happening in the physical, it's just that the physical is impermanent, right? It's transient, it doesn't last. But to say that something you experienced you didn't experience is gaslighting yourself and bypassing. So we have to meet the parts of us that hurt from something and just say, it's okay to feel that. You're not unspiritual because you got traumatized. You're not unloving because you have some resentment towards your abuser. Just accept that part of you. It's okay. It's okay to feel, right? It's part of the creator learning. And then I can breathe again and there's space. And then you might just realize that nothing actually happened.
Right. Yeah. Just got to authentically arrive at that experience. I love how you broke that down. It's so beautiful.